Why? Hey guys, how is everybody doing? And continuing my Spider-Man review series and capping off the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on probably one of the most disappointing films I will ever watch in my life, with Spider-Man 3. So after this, I want to make this very clear. Today I'm going to be wrapping up the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. So after this, I will be reviewing Andrew Garfield's movies next. So don't just think I'm doing Sam Raimi's trilogy. I'm also doing Andrew Garfield. If you have not seen my other two reviews, which speaking of which, if you have not seen my other two reviews of the other of the other Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, please do yourself a favor and go ahead and go watch that. I'll probably even have a card at the end of the video for you to go watch them both. But with that all out of the way, here are my thoughts on Spider-Man 3. Starting off with my positives on Spider-Man 3, even though I'm a little disappointed with this movie, I do have some things to like about this movie. And my first positive is I really enjoyed the scores in this movie. Now, I talked about the score of Spider-Man in the first film of how that's one of my all-time favorite scores and probably my all-time favorite comic book score of all time, which is composed by Danny Elfman. And he would go on to compose the entire trilogy, but this is another one that stands out to me because y- the uh the scores throughout this whole movie, each character seems to have their own, and it gives them their own personality. Obviously, you have Spider-Man. He has his own score. He's had his main score throughout the entire trilogy. I need a haircut. And, you also have characters like Sandman, Venom, Harry, hell, even MJ to an extent. Each one of those characters has their own theme, and not theme, each score, and each score kind of gives it their personality. And kind of like the main one is Venom to me, because I have my thoughts about him later on in the video. But the score that he's given throughout this whole movie, I've always really enjoyed it, and I've always and Danny Elfman does a hell of a job throughout this whole movie. And even Sandman, Sandman's always kind of been like the standout for me. I feel like he's my favorite score in this movie. I really enjoyed all the different scores that they decided to add to this. So it gives each character its own score to add to their personality and their character, and it more kind of focuses on the villains, if anything. But even still, I do think the scores that we get for each character is really, really good. My next positive, it seems to be an issue for a lot of other people, but I guess I'm in the minority. I've always really enjoyed the villain of Flint Marko, aka Sandman. Now, Sandman has never really been a character that I've always been like in love with or, really, really enjoyed whenever he, shows up because, I was more gravitated towards Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, and, you other kind of villains. Hell, even Venom. I grew up with this Venom because I didn't really like the character. But when I found out the real version of Venom, I really liked him. But I kind of gravitated towards those villains: Green Goblin, Doctor Octopus, Venom. Kind of like the bigger ones. And Sandman was never really a character that I necessarily loved or was really excited to see him in a movie type of character. But in this movie, I've always really enjoyed him. I really like the route that they go with him in here, where it kind of adds that emotion to this because this trilogy has had a lot of emotions and a lot of very good emotional beats throughout the entire trilogy. And Flint Marko is a very good example for that at the very end of the trilogy, where he's simply just trying to get money for his sick daughter who is dying. Now, I don't remember if it's said what she is dying of and how long it's been. I'm pretty sure it's cancer if I'm not wrong, but I could be mistaken. I could be mistaken. But either ways, I really enjoy this character, and I've always felt like he could have been good as the main villain. And it's very well known, and I think a lot of people who have seen this movie already know that when this movie was coming out, pretty much everybody involved and could not agree of which villain to do. Sam Raimi was dead set on, doing Sandman. He was dead set on making him the main villain. But Sony and the production company, after the massive success of the last two, they were dead set of having the third film focus on Venom and him being the main villain. But Sam Raimi did not want to do that, and he couldn't agree. The studio couldn't agree until both studios basically just said, fuck it, we'll do both of them. And you can clearly tell which one Sam Raimi wanted more. Because to me, Sandman is a pretty good villain, and I do feel like he could have worked as the main villain throughout the whole movie. And, I'll get into this a bit later about an issue that I have with his character, and another thing I'll get into that I like about his character, about the theme of, like, forgiveness. So I'll get into that later, but he also really adds to that theme of forgiveness. So I really enjoy his character, and I do think that he's a pretty good anti-hero, I guess you could say, because he is a villain, but he also has good intentions of why he's doing what he's doing, which I guess a lot of villains are that way. But, I've always really enjoyed Sandman. He's never really a character that I've always loved necessarily, but this has always been a movie to where I actually really enjoy the character. And, I've already expressed my love for the costume that Spider-Man wears throughout this whole trilogy. It's one of my all-time favorites. And, whenever I think of Spider-Man, I always think of that outfit. But I always really also enjoy the symbiote suit that we get in this with the all-black spider suit. Now, it's just the same exact suit, but it's just, completely black or whatever, which that's always been the symbiote suit, but it's also kind of added veins to it and also a whole new logo, which they also do. But whenever I think of like the symbiote suit, I instantly think of this movie. I instantly think of this outfit. Now, yes, it goes for that realistic kind of thing where it's pretty much just the same outfit. It's just spray painted black
Same, same. Same, same, but different. But
for what I can tell. But I've always really enjoyed the outfit. The outfit in this movie has always really been something I like. And excuse me, whenever Toby kind of puts on that mean face and, kind of gruffer Spider-Man whenever he wears it, I really like that. I don't necessarily like evil Peter necessarily, but evil Spider-Man I've always loved, and that kind of goes along with the outfit. But the symbiote suit in this movie has always been something that I really, really liked. And my last positive, and I touched on this earlier when I was talking about Sandman, but the whole theme of this movie is forgiveness. And I always really, really enjoyed that theme of forgiveness in this movie because there's so many different characters that kind of learn to forgive each other and kind of forget the past and learn how to move on or whatever. There's a lot of characters and a lot of scenes that are like that, and it's kind of between like a bunch of different characters. It's between Flint and Peter, between MJ and Peter, between Harry and Peter, which pretty much all involving Peter. So, I've always really enjoyed the theme with, kind of with Harry. We at the very end of the movie where Peter and Harry learn to forgive each other, where after, Peter and Harry end up fighting and, that whole scuffle, they don't talk to each other. And then when Peter's back to normal, he goes up to Harry and he's like, I need your help, but he doesn't want to help him after, one, he killed his father, and two, he basically just beat the shit out of him and gave him a permanent burnt mark on his fucking face. Like, why would I want to help you after that? But then he comes around and he forgives Peter because he learns that he's not necessarily responsible for his father's death, and also learns that this is my friend and I need to be there for him. I really like that, and I really enjoy that at the very end of the movie. I've always really enjoyed that. That's always been a moment where I've always really loved that, and especially when they team up against Sandman and Venom at the very end of the movie, that's always been a very awesome sequence and a very awesome thing to me. That's always been something I really, really like. So that's one of the moments where like you kind of learn forgiveness with the characters. The second one you could mention is Peter and Flint Marco. Now I will get into this later on, and I have a gigantic issue with it later. But we are basically told that the person that we thought killed Uncle Ben was not the person that killed him, and the real person that killed him was Sandman or Flint Marco. He is the reason that he is the person that actually killed Uncle Ben. Which again, I'll get into that later. But throughout the whole movie, Peter's having this like vendetta type thing towards him. He wants to get him. He wants to kill him pretty much because he thought the person that killed his uncle was actually dead and paid for what he did. But then he finds out that the person that actually did kill him is still roaming around alive, and Peter was basically lied to, he feels like. And so he goes through that whole thing, and at the very end, Flint explains to him what really happened and how, he just needed money for his daughter and he just wanted to take the car, and he was very, kind towards Uncle Ben. But then Uncle Ben tried to talk him out and try to help him, but then in the heat of the moment, he accidentally pulled the trigger and killed his uncle. And so he tells him like, I didn't want to do that. That's not my intent. That was never my intention. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me. I just want you to know the truth. And then Peter at the very end, he learns that I forgive you. Like, I understand what you mean by this, or whatever. That's a very good moment that I really enjoyed at the very end of the movie. That storyline I have an issue with, but I'll get to that later. But even another big forgiveness moment is between Peter and MJ. Now, again, I'll get into those guys later, but they've also kind of had relationship drama throughout the whole movie. But then at the very end, after Venom is killed, Sandman has disappeared, Harry unfortunately got killed in the heat of action. They realize they only really have each other, and they learn to forgive each other at the very end after everything they've been through. So the whole theme of the movie being forgiveness, I've always really enjoyed it, and it's something that I noticed on this most recent rewatch. I never really necessarily noticed it until I rewatched it last night. But now moving on to my aspects. And my one mixed aspect is Harry. Now, the whole arc of this entire trilogy is him wanting to kill Peter, or Spider Man, because he believes that he killed his father. That has been his whole character pretty much throughout this entire trilogy and throughout all of these movies. And we finally get to this, and he is after Peter, and he's trying to kill him. Now, I'm really glad that we're finally getting that payoff to where we're finally getting that Spider-Man versus New Goblin, I guess you could say. I'm really glad we're finally getting that, and finally getting that after being teased for so long, and especially after Spider-Man 2. So I'm very glad that we got that, but I've always hated that they decided to go in the route because they did that very early on in the movie. It happened in like the first 30, 40 minutes of the film, and so, since they did it at the very beginning, they had Harry lose his memory because he basically hit his head too hard after fighting Peter.
No! What?
And he goes into some sort of like character switch to where instead of wanting to kill Peter, he unfortunately loses his memory, unfortunately loses it, and now he completely forgets that he's Spider-Man. He completely forgets everything that nearly happened before that, and he just remembers his father dying and him and Peter and MJ all being friends. That's all he really remembers. And I have never really liked that. I feel like that's very poor and lazy writing because it never felt like they necessarily knew what to do with Harry. Now, I honestly feel like he could have been the main villain of the movie because that's where this movie also goes wrong. It tries to do too much. That is one of the issues with this film. It tries to do too much. You try to have Sandman as the villain. You try to have Venom as the villain. And you try to have Harry as the villain as well. This movie does too much in this film and adding too many villains to where it just feels cramped and just jam packed. But what they do with Harry and this whole vendetta that he's always had to get for Peter to kill him after his father's death, I honestly believe that Harry could have just been the full blown villain throughout the entire movie. But since the studio kept getting involved and Sam Raimi had other plans to where they kind of just became lazy at the very end and they just had him bonk his head and forget everything. And then very randomly, out of fucking nowhere, he just basically gains his memory back, and to attack Peter's heart, he has MJ break up with him. Okay, there's levels to this shit, dude. Now, one, your dad, Green Goblin, who he didn't want to do the same thing and attack Peter's heart. What did he do? Oh, he went after his aunt and put her in the hospital. What do? You have a girlfriend break up with him. Motherfucker, there's levels to this shit. And then at the very end, after Peter and Harry fight again, and then Harry basically gives up on trying to fight him, and then Peter goes back to ask for his help, but he tells him no, fuck you, pretty much. And then this entire trilogy has been built up to basically Harry not listening to Peter about his dad basically killed himself. His dad killed himself because he tried to kill him because he was the goblin. But he didn't fucking listen to Peter. But apparently, when the fucking butler tells him that he cleaned up his father's wounds and saw that the blade that killed him was from his own glider. How the fuck did he know that? Don't know. Don't care. But he tells him, like, oh, basically your dad killed himself. And for whatever fucking reason, by the way, now that I'm just now remembering this, he has known this ever since his father fucking died, but never bothered to tell Harry that fucking he saw that and this whole vendetta that he's had against Spider-Man. He could have easily prevented all of this by just telling him that.
from his glider. There's no question your father died by his own hand.
You are so fired.
What?
You've known that all this time. And you picked now to tell me?
I thought this would be the best time to tell you the truth.
But instead kept it a secret from him for some dumb fucking reason. But apparently when he decides to tell him, Harry's just like, oh, now I gotta go save Spider-Man. Like, no, fuck you. That's not how this works. Just a lot of the decisions that they do with Harry, I really don't like. I'm glad that they finally decided to cap off the whole trilogy and his whole character of wanting to kill Peter, but all of this bullshit that I just talked about the butler telling him, and that's what convinces him, and the whole memory loss bullshit, that's completely lazy writing. But now moving on to my negatives. And one of my first negatives is I have always hated this subplot and this, well, not subplot, this whole plot and decision, I guess I could say, of basically telling us that Flip Marko is actually the person that killed Uncle Ben. It was not the person that we thought it was in the first movie. So basically, that whole sequence of Peter chasing him down and basically causing his death, and that whole exchange where he realizes is that he killed Uncle Ben, and kind of he's the reason that Uncle Ben is dead because he let him get away. That's basically thrown out all of that is basically all thrown out the window and basically told, fuck you, we're gonna do this now. And not only does it just ruin that awesome moment in that first film, but it also ruins one of the best scenes ever in a comic book film to me, and one of the most emotional scenes in a comic book film for me is the moment where when Peter basically tells Aunt May that he is responsible for Uncle Ben's death. Not only does it destroy the scene in the first film where Peter gets his revenge, but it also destroys the scene where he fully admits that he is at fault for causing his uncle's death. Not only are you ruining those two sequences, but you are adding some complete bullshit that does not need to fucking be there.
How do you fuck that up? How do you fuck that up?
I understand that the theme of this film is forgiveness, and they try to add that with Sandman, but my god, man, you did not have to add that, and that is some poor fucking writing. That's one of the biggest issues with this film is the writing. I have always fucking hated that decision, even when I was a kid, young and stupid, didn't understand movies, didn't understand how a movie was made at the time. Even that small little lad of mine even thought that was a stupid fucking choice. I have hated that ever since I first watched this movie. It ruins some of the best scenes you will see in a comic book film and one of the best vengeful, you know, sequences in a film. And the fact that you add that, I think is complete bullshit. You could have had Sandman as the villain, yeah, and I'm sure there's a better way you could have worked it out, but to have him be responsible for Uncle Ben's death, no, that is never going to be anything I like. I'm kind of going to put this all together. Both MJ in general and the whole relationship stuff between her and Peter is just completely fucking dumb. And I really don't like it. Especially at the way Spider Man 2 ends, where you get that beautiful moment and that very, satisfying moment of MJ realizing that she loves Peter, but Peter does not want to risk a relationship with her due to him being Spider Man and the chance of her getting hurt or even killed. But MJ tells him, like, I'm going to love you no matter what. Spider-Man or no, I will always love you, and you're not going to stop me from that, and I'm willing to take that risk. You get that very, very amazing moment at that end of Spider-Man 2, and you would get so much hope going into this with the relationship. But the relationship and MJ in general, it's just terrible. One of the moments that really sticks out to me, and I think anybody that's had a girlfriend and I think has been in a relationship will realize that Peter is a fucking idiot throughout this whole movie. Because there's a moment where MJ reads the newspaper where she gets that one bad critic basically criticizing her singing, which I think that critic is just stupid. I think her singing is pretty good in this movie. And you get that moment, and she's just like, "Oh, like, this is good. This is messing with me." And Peter's way of saying this is like, oh, well, I deal with that all the time. Spider-Man gets criticized all the time. Like, you can't let them get to you. And she goes, well, this isn't about you. This is about me. And I'm kind of sitting there. I'm like, okay, I understand what Peter's trying to do, kind of help her cope a little bit. It's like, oh, I understand what you mean by criticizing. But come on, dude. She's kind of right in that moment where, like, this isn't about you, which I think if you've been in a relationship, I feel like all of us would have been like, yeah, yeah, they're there. I understand. Just holding her, patting her on the back, trying to comfort her, not fucking comparing her to you, dude. That's not how that fucking works. And then that moment where you get that iconic scene where he recreates the upside down kiss with Gwen. Anybody, everybody and their fucking mother would tell you that if you did that in front of your girlfriend, you're gonna be in the doghouse for a while. It doesn't matter if you're fucking dressed up as Spider-Man. Like, one, you're still Peter Parker. She fucking knows that, and she's gonna fucking know that you're the one kissing her. Doesn't matter if you have the mask on or anything. It's not a fucking excuse, dude. And then another thing is that you kissed a girl that's your lab partner in Dr. Connors in fucking college, dude. Like, that's even fucking weirder. I side with MJ on all that bullshit. So, Peter, you're a fucking idiot. I will leave it at that. And not only even just that, MJ in general throughout this whole movie is a fucking cunt.
What do you say we go somewhere else?
That's a huge bitch!
I cannot stand her even when I can side with her. When I side with her at moments and I just admitted that. But there are moments where I just think she's an absolute fucking cunt. Because she is so fucking aggravating and just so fucking why is Peter with you type shit. Because after she gets that one bad critic, apparently a single bad critic gets her fired from a stage play, which I don't understand that whatsoever. That's not really how critics work. But whatever. What do I know? I know nothing about show business and gets fired, and now she's pissed and takes it out basically on Peter, which is fucking dumb if you ask me, and fucking basically is all pissed at him after the Gwen stuff, which I can side with her on that, and all of this stuff about her losing her job at the stage play, and basically takes it out all on Peter, which you're a fucking bitch for that alone, and then, fucking, the moment that really pushes me over the edge is apparently to not feel alone and to get away from Peter, she decides to go with his best friend. You go with his best friend and you're hanging out and you're cooking food with him, and then you quote unquote accidentally kiss him. Bitch, you fucking leaned into that. And not only is that just bad enough that you basically cheated on him with his best friend, which is even fucked up. If my best friend did that, I'd fucking kill him. But not only did you do that, but you also found out that his uncle's killer is still out there. And you know how emotionally involved that he is with this case now, and how much of a vendetta that he has to kill him now. After all of that, you find all of that out, and you understand that he's going to be vengeful and wanting to kill that dude. What do? You go cheat on him with his best friend.
Oh my god, she's a complete slut.
You're a fucking cunt for that. I am sorry to use that word. I don't like using that word that much, but god damn it, you're a fucking bitch for that. And that genuinely pisses me off. I'm sitting here, I'm getting mad about a fictional character. But that, to me, the whole relationship and just MJ in general, it's all fucking stupid. And it gets ruined because of that amazing moment that you have at the end of Spider-Man 2. And you're so excited for this, and then you just get fucking let down. And I touched upon this a little bit in Spider-Man 2 when I talked about it. That movie kind of leaned a little bit towards more of the goofy side, and, it's not as distracting as it is in this movie, but, in that film I can understand what they're going for there. But in this movie, they could basically go full comedy and full goofball at this point, and I don't like it. The only piece of comedy that I actually like in this movie is J.K. Simmons' JJ. Because JJ throughout this whole movie is fucking hilarious.
You hired him last week. Freelance.
I did? What's that smell? It's Brock.
He's the only thing that's funny. But the whole evil Peter stuff, like, just Toby's performance as evil Peter is just an entire joke alone. And I don't like it. It's just so fucking stupid. And then the whole scene where he's just doing this, dancing around or whatever, pointing at chicks, doing the little hip thrust and then doing this in the street or whatever. Like, that's just fucking stupid, which I understand it's also supposed to be like a direct thing from the raindrops falling on my head sequence in Spider-Man 2. That one kind of works because it's not really necessarily played for laughs. This one's full on played for laughs, and I don't like it. But the comedy just throughout this entire film, I've just never liked it. It's a lot like Army of Darkness, because Sam Raimi. Apparently, the conclusion to his trilogies, he always likes to make the third one a comedy. It doesn't always work, but there are moments where I do laugh, and JJ's the only piece of comedy that I actually like. Everything else, no. And now we gotta talk about the elephant in the room. Probably my biggest issue with this film is Venom. Venom is one of my all-time favorite comic book villains, and he is an awesome villain. This was my introduction to him, and I didn't like him because this is what I thought Venom was. And then I actually started reading comic books, and then I watched the Spider-Man animated series. Then I realized how fucking cool Venom is. And especially once you find out how cool Venom is, and then you watch this, it's just fucking disappointing. Because, one, Venom is not even Venom, it's just Eddie. It's basically all Eddie's personality. Now everyone's like, "Oh, but Venom is Eddie Brock." No, fucking Venom's Venom. He fucking takes over Brock. Uh, Brock. Eddie Brock. Excuse me. But even that, like, even outside of Venom, he's dog shit as he is. Eddie Brock in general is a fucking jackass, and I hate this version of Eddie Brock. And no hate towards his actor, but this movie ruined the actor for me. I don't remember his name, but whenever he shows up in a movie, I instantly think of this movie and his performance as Venom. And that's a bad thing, because I don't want to remember him from this movie. Now, he's been in a few good movies to where he gives decent performances, but his actor I just don't like anymore. Like, whenever he shows up, I just don't like him. But his Eddie Brock is just a fucking jackass, and I don't like him. And he's played for laughs, and it's not funny. Like, he shows up in the Daily Bugle, and he's a smartass or whatever, stuff like that. And then fucking this just aggravates me. Your girlfriend is hanging from a fucking 100-story building about to fucking fall to her death, and you're standing there taking pictures, not trying to do anything to help her. What could you do? I don't fucking know. Maybe not stand there and just take your goddamn picture of her. Like, who the fuck does that? Is my question. And you're just standing there taking pictures, and then when she gets saved, you're not trying to comfort her or hug her or kiss her or whatever. You're worried about taking pictures of Spider-Man.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
You're a fucking jackass, dude. Like, who the fuck does that? I don't know. Just not only is Venom just a very disappointing villain, especially when you find out how badass the villain is, but just when you watch this movie and you see how disappointing the villain is, and just seeing Eddie Brock in general before he even becomes Venom, just Eddie Brock and Venom in general, just why did Sony need to be? Why did Sony just fucking? Why couldn't you leave it alone? But overall, guys, I I got a little bit heated with this movie, but in all honesty, I don't hate the movie. I don't think it's terrible. When I was younger, I thought it was terrible. I proclaimed this movie as the worst movie I'd ever seen, and then I started watching more movies and got a YouTube channel, and I've seen some pretty shit movies. But I don't think this is one of the worst films I've ever seen. It's not one of the worst comic book movies I've ever seen. Is it one of the most disappointing superhero movies I've ever seen? Definitely. As a conclusion to a trilogy, this is one of the most disappointing films I have ever seen. And because of the disappointment of this film and the disappointment of what this movie could have been and how much better it could have been, it really pains me to see that we never got to see a Spider-Man 4. I really do wonder what a Spider-Man 4 would have looked like. Hell, maybe even a Spider-Man 5, because Spider-Man 4 was originally going to include Vulture as the main villain, and we've had Dr. Connors being teased in Spider-Man 2. He could have been Lizard in Spider-Man 5, all I know. And it's really disappointing to see that we never got to see Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire do more Spider-Man movies. Is it good to see that we got Tobey back in Spider-Man No Way Home? Absolutely. But I still wonder to this day what more Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies could look like. Man, I think today's day and age, it's the best time that we could probably ever get another Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, but I guess we'll see what the future holds. But this is a very disappointing ending to a trilogy that is just a near masterpiece and arguably the greatest trilogy in comic book history. But what do you guys think about Spider-Man 3? Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Is this actually your favorite of the Spider-Man trilogy? Let me know in the comments below and we shall talk about it. And if you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe, hit the bell notification so you will get notified for all my latest videos and for my Andrew Garfield Spider-Man review series. Thank you all so much for watching, and of course, until my next video, I'll see you all next time.